Hey guys, Katie here, and today's video is a scrap lift challenge celebrating Julie and her 10,000 subscriber milestone. Now, I am almost one of the last to go of the creative design team, but I am excited to show you what I have to share. As most of you probably already know, since you follow all of my creative design team friends, Julie has hit 10,000 subscribers. She did this a month or so ago, but we were busy with the February birthday card event, so on and so forth, and then on stage. So we decided to prolong this a little while, and that is what we're doing in March. Here is the photo that we have all been using. I have printed it in 8x10. I might regret that here in just a second, but we'll see. I do have a 5x7 on order, so if anything, I'll just rough it out and add that photo later. I've also pulled some additional photos to add. Here's one of the garden. This is a 5x7. Here's one of this walkway, and we've got Jama standing there, and then Julie, of course, walking toward Jama. And then I just printed some of my favorite aspects of the garden. I loved this dragon. It actually had water coming out of its mouth. And then here is, you can barely see the dragon's body, but here is the stream that it led down to. And then, of course, I loved that. My Mimi loved birdhouses. And even though this was not a birdhouse, it just kind of reminded me of that. I wanted the organic feel, so I have pulled out the woven textures, thinking that I could find something that kind of mimicked bamboo. You've got a front and a back. And of course, I have 3 of each, but I've already kind of been using this. So I'm going to have to decide which one to use and which one will kind of go with my photos. And then I've also pulled out a kit from Stampin' Up. Now this is the Cherry Blossom Treat Box kit. You can see here it's got a lot of elements like all of our kits do. And then here is what the intended kit is supposed to look like, a little cherry blossom treat box. But I think I'm actually going to try to use the open face somehow, some way. Our oldest son, actually proposed to his now wife under the cherry blossoms in DC. They live up that way, and ever since that, I just absolutely love cherry blossoms. In fact, that memory came up today in my Facebook memories. So here is a look at that. And then I've also pulled some memories and more cards, 3x4, and then some brand new strawberry slush gems. I love them. I think they're going to go perfect with the cherry blossoms. They kind of got some light and some dark going, and then some little specks of gold. So I'm going to see what I can do as far as making a decision on my DSP. And I'm going to map my photos, and then I'll be right back and we can get started. I have picked these 2. So of course this one is from that paper collection I showed you. And then this one is from the lovely garden. And the back side is this real pretty hydrangea looking, but I love the green. And I am going to actually cut some scallops using the fancy borders. Oops. The fancy border dies. Now, a lot of people have used these for cards. I even did a card recently on Instagram that shows how you can make a little cute fun fold using it, but I want to try to use it as or on a scrapbooking layout. So a lot of my customers are scrapbookers, and so I usually try to show them how they can use products that are meant for cards. That term is used loosely, but how they can use them on their scrapbook layouts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a piece of this DSP, and I am going to start with 5 inches, and I can always trim off what I don't need, and I'm going to cut 2 of those. And then I'm going to bring out my Versamat Because I want the green side showing, I'm going to do some markings on this floral side. And I'm going to line this up on my Versamat. And then I am just going to line up that edge with the edge of the paper. And then I am going to use a pencil and a T-ruler. And so you see how these little black marks are a little less than 1 3/4 inches. So I am going to remove that. If you think it is easy to line this up, it is not. I don't know what the deal is, but it just gets harder and harder to line up. And so I'm going to go down about 3/4 inches. And then this is about 6.5, I think, inches. But I'm just going to come over here and I am just going to mark right there. So you can see those marks, and that's going to help me line this up once it is in my cutter. I have my die cut out. Just pay attention to the sandwich that you need for your die cut. And then you'll need something to keep this in place. So again, I'm lining up those black lines with my pencil marks. So you can see here, I have this cut, and then now we just need to go to the trimmer and trim from line to line. Again, remember that I'm going to cut. Now, even though I marked these, remember those markings were to keep this straight, not necessarily meet those lines, if that makes sense. Now, you can cut these with scissors or your trimmer. I do not cut a straight line. Not at all. So I am just going to find that slit. I know it's hard for y'all to tell, and that slit we are just going to cut up, and your blade can kind of feel it. And then I am going to cut down. And there you have it. And keep in mind we're using this side. So I'm going to repeat that over here. And once I get this on my layout, if it is too thick for that 8x10, I can always trim off that straight edge. This layout is going to be built on just white cardstock bases. You won't really be able to see any of the cardstock, but I'm going to trim this paper. Again, just because I have 3 sheets of it, and I'm going to use 2, basically the bulk. If I can trim some of it just to kind of save some, then that's what I'm going to do. To start building this page, I need to decide how much of this pattern paper, this DSP border, I'm going to trim off. So I'm kind of eyeballing that and then marking it with my finger and then going to pull it over to my trimmer. And it ends up being about 1 inch. So I'm going to trim both of those pieces and then put in the woven texture up at the top. And then I'm pulling out that cherry blossom box, and I'm just trimming 1/2 inch pieces. Now I'll pull this one, and then I'm going to pull another one, trim off those ends, and that is what allows it to fold up to be that cute little box, and then go ahead and cut 2 more 1/2 inch strips. I'm going to start by putting some liquid adhesive to the bottom part of that 1/2 inch strip, and that's going to allow me to attach that to that border, and then I can just trim off the excess. Now the excess I will use for that little tiny piece that is over on the right, and then I'll just line that up with that other side and then trim off the excess on the inside. Apply some adhesive and then go ahead and get that adhered down. Now I did not apply adhesive under the scallops because I'm going to do some hidden journaling as well as tuck that 8x10 underneath that, like you can see there. To do this scalloped piece for the right layout, since it's at the top and I can't really line it up side by side, I am just using this left layout as a guide. And again, applying liquid adhesive, trimming off the excess, and then adhering that down. And then that will get adhered down to the top of the right layout base. And then I have two 2-inch strips of that woven texture. Now, one of those 2-inch strips happens to be what I cut off from the left layout. It will get adhered down at the bottom flush, and then this one will kind of tuck in underneath that scalloped. And then I have a row of those 3 photos that are adhered to White Daisy cardstock, and I'll get those adhered down to my layout base as well. Now, one thing about Julie, she loves to use butterflies. In fact, one of my favorite projects that she did actually was from a Close to My Heart collection. So I am just die cutting these butterflies from one of the new collections that will debut in May. And then I am going to attempt some flowers. Again, I can't do it like Julie does it, but I'm going to try my best with the butterflies and then these adorable flowers from that cherry blossom celebration kit. Now, I love that this flower gets inked up in the espresso ink spot that comes with the kit, and then you just stamp it over these floral pieces, and then that light pink that's printed on the floral pieces just kind of shows through, and I absolutely love it. It really looks like cherry blossoms to me. Now, I am going to add some twigs. Now, there is a cherry blossom twig that comes in the stamp set, but instead of doing that, I had a whole bunch of extra that I had cut from Delightful Wishes, and so I'm going to use that instead. The tags that come with the cherry blossom kit, I'm actually adhering at the left and the right of these border pieces. And then through the holes, I'm going to thread some ribbon. Now I end up doing this kind of scalloped jute. It's real natural. I did get it on clearance some time ago, maybe a month or so ago, and I'm going to thread that through those holes. Now, in order to do that, it is really not cooperating very well. So I'm going to use the trick of washi tape. And what you do is you just cover the end of the ribbon with washi tape. You can either wrap it around kind of a spiral and then create a tip, or you can trim it like I'm doing here, and then it just threads through those holes. So I'm going to repeat that process over here on the right, and then I'm also going to do it for the right layout as well. For this large butterfly, I am using liquid adhesive on the body, and then I have trimmed out some dimensionals for the wings. Now I am going to reposition this butterfly. It was hanging off a bit, and I definitely didn't want to trim its gorgeous wings. Now, for the top right, I'm going to use a small butterfly, and I want to have a little landing spot. So there are these little pieces that broke from one of the boxes. So I'm just going to adhere those around the corners of the photo, and then I'm going to attach the smaller butterfly with a little bitty small dimensional. Now, on all of my butterflies, I did add some white highlights to the body using a white gel pen. So I'll go ahead and get that done. Now, for my title, I wanted to use the Marbled Elegance. Now, I have a lot of pinks in here because of the cherry blossoms, but you can see the big red bridge. So I like that this Marbled Elegance kind of had the pinks and the reds. For my title, I am using the alphabet a la mode, so I'm going to die cut that. And it really wasn't popping for me, so I decided to use some Creameez. I used this on a layout or two ago here on my channel, and I absolutely love this. This is from the Shimmerz collection, and again, they're called Creameez, so it just kind of has that subtle look, and I end up really loving it. I'm just kind of adding it where I know my title will go, as well as adding it to those tags at the bottom left and right, and then also kind of where behind my flowers will go. I decided to also add some white gloss spray. I've covered my photo, and then I'm just going to kind of add some splatter, and I really like that stark white against the Creameez and then against that green that's in that DSP. Now, because I did that, you can see how it's really warped. One good thing to use for your DSP, that kind of thicker cardstock, it's shiny. You can use it for backing. I've used it to back some of my journaling that I used on 3D foam tape. And then you can see here, I'm just attaching that behind that scalloped piece, and it pretty much gets rid of all the warping. I repeated this on the right side as well, and I'm going to pick this up and kind of show you. See how well that really added that stability, so it's not really warped anymore. Now I can start adhering down my title on the left layout. But before I do that, I noticed that some of the letters didn't have as much gold as the others. So I'm using my gold paint pens to just add some gold around 4 of the letters. I end up kind of adding it here and there on a couple of other ones. So I'm going to finish that up and then start adhering down my title. Now, hindsight, I probably should have used some adhesive sheets, but my fine tip applicator on my glue works just as well. So I'm going to get these last 2 letters adhered down. And right here is where I'm kind of thinking, this even with the creamies behind it, it's really not popping. So I'm going to start trying to think of what I can do to really make that title pop. Now, as far as the little cherry blossoms go, again, I'm using the twigs from Delightful Wishes. I'm going to adhere those down, and you saw me trim that, and that's going to allow me to use some of those twigs over on the left. And then I'm going to just attach these little cherry blossoms with some dimensionals, just kind of at the ends of these twigs. I will add kind of one in the middle at the bottom left. Now, for these memories and more, there are a couple of cards. One is going to be a journal spot, and I will add a slit in my memory protector so you can pull it out. And then I'm trimming off a little title that says, Remember This Moment. And I'm going to adhere that to the top of that journal card using some dimensionals. It's really going to make it pop, and then it's just going to kind of add to the title. So here's where I got the grand idea of kind of making that red pop a little bit more. So I'm using a real red ink pad and then one of my alphabet stamps from my stash. And I am just stamping the word gardens. And then I'm going to try to mimic that marbled elegance by using my gold paint pen. And this is the tiniest little tip, as well as my white gel pen to kind of add some highlights. I did fussy cut that out, and then I am adhering that kind of over that ribbon by adding some dimensionals just to the bottom of the title. Now, for my right layout, I decided not to tuck anything underneath that scallop, so I did adhere that down with some dimensionals, and then I'm adding those cherry blossoms again to the twigs. And then I'm going to add that second little sub sentiment. And this one says, Memories are everything. So I've trimmed that and then I've dovetailed it. And then I'm attaching that with dimensionals over another little piece of the card that I did the subtitle on the left layout. I am going to come back in and add some additional twigs to the left and then go ahead and adhere a cherry blossom kind of over the center part of that. And then kind of after looking at the layout, I didn't like that the twigs didn't go all the way to the edge because they did on the left layout. So I've just trimmed some more and then attaching those with liquid adhesive. Those will not have any cherry blossoms, but I like the look that it kind of seems like it keeps going. Now, as far as the embellishments, I'm using these brass butterflies. So I'm going to adhere those down, the small and large, around these little clusters. And then I'm going to repeat the process on the left layout as well as bring in those strawberry slush gems. Now here is a look of at the completed layout. I did add a 5x7 photo and I'm going to add a flip flap on the top of my memory protector to get those down. Here are some close-ups of that layout and all of the little bitty details, and of course, the elements that celebrate Julie and try to mimic all of her gorgeous style. Remember that I will leave links down below to any of the products that I used if they are still available. If you liked what you saw, please leave a comment, hit that like button, and subscribe if you aren't already a subscriber. And don't forget to check out the other CDT girls. They've been posting all week, and then we do have a couple more that will post after me.